What's up, everybody? Mad because Brad, or you know me by my first and last name, Brad. We're here with Pro Tabletop. So we want to add more content, right? That's what we're trying to do. So this is going to be the revamp of what we used to do way back when, before we were even Pro Tabletop. We were called War Torn Creative. We did stuff called Army Builder, and we would build lists and we would talk about them. And we're going to do that. But on top of that, we are also going to correlate these to the next stream match that is going to happen and summary battle reports. We're going to try to tie a lot of our content together, and what we really want to do is we really want to help people see how different units play, build unique lists and everything like that. So if you guys are ever trying to build lists or anything, make sure to just hit us up, comment, let us know, show us your lists. We would love to give you guys feedback on it and help everybody adjust and become better players. So the next stream match is going to be myself versus Mr. Thomas Bird. I'm going to be playing Eldar. When I say Eldar, I mean a mix of Eldar versus his Ultramarines. So we haven't done this matchup in a while. We've been jumping through a lot of different armies, but we wanted to come back to that and just kind of play each other again, do a very, very good, piece of stream content where we're playing each other. And I believe we are going to have Chad and Steven on the mics and running the stream. So it'll be a really, really good matchup. So let's get into what that matchup is going to be, and then we're going to go over the list that I'm going to be playing, the secondaries that I'm going to be picking, and also just kind of how the entire list works, why I'm playing all the units. It's going to be a little lengthy video. We're going to go into as much detail as we possibly can about the list, to just kind of explain how it works. So let's start off with the mission. So what we usually do for these stream days is we roll for the mission. We don't want anything to determine what we're going to be playing. So we like to randomize it as much as possible, so there's no advantages to one player or the other. So this mission is going to be Surround and Destroy. So going over that mission, so within Surround and Destroy, there are 6 objectives, as you can see. So from the center of the battle, 2 of them are going to be 10 inches apart. So that's a 20-inch gap. And then, of course, the measurements that they have in the book and everything like that are not from the center for everything else, which is just aggravating. But they're 20 inches from the center, and then 14 inches from the center. So you've got 4 kind of in each quarter, and then you've got 2 more in the center. And this is I guess you would say hot dog deployment, as we used to call it back in the day, or a Dawn of War deployment, where it's on the long sides of the board. So you're 24 inches away from your opponent. It's very, very good deployment for certain armies, and we'll get into how that affects the Eldar in a second. But this mission is a hold 1, hold 2, and hold more. So we will touch on how the army works once you see what the army is, because going over right now wouldn't make too much sense with the mission. So just wanted to let you know we're going to be playing Search and Destroy. So when we reference the mission and how stuff is going to play on the mission, that is what's going to happen. Then for my secondaries, what I'm going to be picking for a mission like this against Thomas is I'm going to be picking Deploy Scramblers, because my list is literally meant to get that very easily. This list version may be a little less easy because there is no Warp Spiders. Warp Spiders do very, very well for Deploy Scramblers, but I changed it up because I wanted to go without them. So Deploy Scramblers, while we stand, we fight, and we'll talk about what units those are because it's very, very cool, and I think it's very good for Eldar. And then the third one I usually struggle with. Sometimes I'll lean into the mission secondaries. Sometimes I'll do other ones. Well, my backup is always engaged on all fronts, which is not the easiest for my army. It can become very easy depending on terrain, but it could also be very hard. But I've got some elements in here, and in a mission like this, it kind of lends itself to I should be able to get it most of the time. Turn 1, I have to overextend a little bit to get it with a unit to at least get 2 points. So not the best, not the worst, but I think I can usually end up with 10 to 12 points with it. So that's what we're going to go with. All right, so you guys have all been waiting for going over the list. Now, I will say, before we go over every single unit and everything, this list starts off with 6 CP. So if you like a list that has a lot of CP, this is not going to be for you. But for all intents and purposes, if you learn to play a list with less CP, there's nothing wrong with it. Like I bank on generating some CP, and if I generate a lot off my warlord trait, then I can just kind of do extra cool things. So it's okay. I'm used to playing with it, and I will have a detachment of Harlequins, Drukhari, and Craftworld. So I'm fully mixed. I don't have a lot of CP, but I think that there's strengths to every single Eldar army, and I'm just not a fan of running pure Harlequins right now. I think that there's a lot of negatives to it, and I'll do a different video on why I don't run that. But for right now, let's get into it. So the Shadowseer, his pivotal role is going to be shield from harm. So that's going to be the -1 to wound for infantry within 6 inches. So that's very good, and I think it's good in a mixed list like this where I'm only running infantry. I don't really need the -6 inches to shoot, just because infantry is hiding a lot more. You don't have to just sit out in the open, so it's really just not needed, and it's really good for the mid to late game to just kind of be a little bit more tanky. Everybody's used to hitting Eldar, on 3s, or wounding them on 3s, sorry, and when they wound them on 4s, it just makes it a little bit harder to wound you. So it's not a bad thing. Then for his psychic powers, we got Shards of Light and Twilight Pathways. So the reason for Shards of Light is just that additional mortal wound output, and you also make them -1 leadership, which is really good when you're using your grenade launcher, because we all know it's very hard to beat leadership in this game, especially when the leadership is 8, 9, 10. So if you can just make that a little less and you target something that is maybe a lower leadership, like a 7 or an 8, well, now you need a 6 or a 7 on the dice. It's a little bit more palatable to do another D3 mortal wounds. So he is just a mortal wound output. I could do Smite, I could do Shards of Light, and then I can shoot something. So he has, a potential from 3 to 9 mortal wounds per turn if you do it like that, which is really good for a character. Then you've got Twilight Pathways. I played several games without Twilight Pathways. I am just not convinced that it is worth it because you can't advance during it. So it's like, oh man, double move, but I move 8 inches. Is it really worth it? The answer is yes. It actually is. So any movement that you can get is going to be worth it, especially for Harlequins. And now what you have to be careful of with this is that you don't overextend though, because if you use Twilight Pathways on your first turn, you could put a 5-man or a 10-man unit all the way across the board still, because you can move 8 inches, you can auto advance them 6, right? So you're moving 14, then you move another 8, you're moving 22 inches. So in between your 2 deployments, it's 24 inches. So now you're 2 inches away from their deployment. So anything that is deployed close up to that deployment, you have in between a 2 and 4 inch charge essentially. So now they're either going to have to deploy, 8 inches off of their deployment to make you have a 10+ inch charge, which you still might make. But that's okay, right? You have this threat. You go, hey, I can move 22 inches. Yes, you have to spend CP. Yes, you have to get the psychic power off. And yes, you have to make sure you're out of deny range. And you also have to make sure you're within 3 inches of this unit that is advancing. So it's very good, though. It's also good for late game, even moving yourself as the Shadowseer if you need to position yourself, be able to do more mortal wounds to a certain unit, throw a 5-man on an objective to take it away, to get domination, to control the middle, whatever it is. There's a lot of good use cases. I'm a very, very aggressive player. So typically I will have a 10-man in your face on turn 1 because of Twilight Pathways, and they will have a 3-up invuln, and they either sit there and take all the shooting and are a distraction, or they kill something, but it's kind of okay. I'm okay with it most of the time. So that's usually what I will do and how I will play with the Shadowseer with this list. And then the Troupe Master, he is going to have the Warlord trait, Player of Twilight. I actually go back and forth of the Shadowseer and the Troupe Master having this, and I haven't really settled in on which one is better. So let me know what you prefer, because there's positives and negatives. The Shadowseer is going to live longer, so you're going to have your Warlord trait longer, but the Troupe Master having the reroll keeps him alive longer as well for his save, because you can reroll a save and you can CP reroll a save, so you can get 2 rerolls, if something big is hitting him in combat or shooting him. or something like that. So I go back and forth. We're going to keep it on True Master for this one. And what that does is every time a stratagem is played, you roll a dice, and however much CP it costs for that stratagem, if you get that on the dice, you get that much CP back. And it's unlimited. So this breaks the 1 CP per turn. So it's really good. It's amazing. I have found you get in between 6 to 8 CP a game typically. So that's another reason why I'm okay with starting with 6 CP. Obviously, if you start with more, you might get more. But it is what it is. It's an amazing warlord trait. And then you get to reroll a hit, a wound, or a save roll once per game. And I usually save that for a save. Then you've got Choreographer of War. So he's going to be rerolling all wounds for him and all, the Harlequins, which is just huge. It makes them absolutely devastating in close combat. And then I put an extra pivotal roll for a CP for Darkness Bite. That is going to do 2 mortal wounds after every time you fight. So it's really, really good when there's just a unit you don't clean up. It allows you to go in against bigger units or stronger characters and then know, like, hey, I'm going to do 2 mortal wounds. I don't have to kill them. If it's a 5 wound character and, you're doing flat 2 damage, you need 2 of those to go through, and then boom, do mortals and you finish them off. So it is really good. And then he does have the Fang Relic, which is going to give you +1 attack per battle round. And it is also going to be -3 strength 5, -3 AP, flat 2 damage. And so obviously, right, you could increase your damage by 1 and make it flat 3. I find that very, very useful against things that are -1 damage. It still makes, yes, it is 2 CP. It might not be the best, but like if you go against like Death Guard or even Dark Angels now, and you make it flat 3 damage, then they're taking 2 damage still. Now your True Master still can do work by themselves. So True Master is really, really good. Kills a lot of stuff. Having 5 attacks base +1 on the charge, so that's 6, plus the battle round. Battle round 1, you're having 7 attacks. And battle round 5, you're having 11 attacks that are flat 2 damage. Could be flat 3. Like beast mode. And if you have the CP, you can fight twice in certain situations if you need to. Then you're going to do the mortal wounds 2 times. So you're going to do 4 mortal wounds. Really, really good. Really, really good. Then we kind of get into the basicness of this battalion. So I've got 2 9-mans and I have 3 5-mans. They all have caresses, and that is literally it. So I value caresses over everything else because they are strength 5. And the reason for that is if you have a strength 4 weapon and you go against anything that is toughness 8, like you're just not going to do anything, even with rerolls. Like you're looking for 6s. You're fishing for 6s. Fishing for 5s is so much better. It's not even funny. So most of the so against anything in the game, you're at least looking for 5s. You're never going to be looking for 6s, which is really, really strong. And then with the rerolls paired with that, it's just really good. And because we're Frozen Stars, it's 5 attacks, per Harlequin. It's really, really good. With the 9-man, that's 45 attacks when you go into combat. If you make them flat 2 damage, that's just devastating. They're strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage. You can make them 2 damage. Really, really good. I also don't take any just throwaway models in the units, mainly because the way I typically play is I'm going to hit you first and then I'm going to die. So if I'm going to hit you first, I would rather have 100% strength as much as I can to go into that fight. Now the 5-mans, they are a little bit more throwaway where I can throw them on an objective to just take it away. But most of the time the stuff on that objective, you're going to be able to charge and kill most of it. The exception being if there is something that is going to make you fight last. That is going to be the biggest weakness to that. If there's a Justicar, if you're going against the new Death Guard where you fight last and they have a lot of attacks, you don't necessarily want to charge that. You just want to take the objective from them. So yeah, lots of close combat. This is my close combat threat of the army. We move fast. We try to stay in cover. We just overwhelm them in the early turns. And when I play, you can't be afraid to lose units. Like, it's a 100-point unit, it's a 180-point unit. Like, cool. The 9-mans, I'm going to always give one of them a 3-up in bone. I'm always going to put them in the vulnerable spot to get shot at or to fight, because I'm fine with taking 3-up in bone saves. Like, just shoot at me with everything that you have. I'm going to take 3-up in bone saves. Perfectly fine. You want to shoot my other stuff? Cool. Shoot my other stuff. Well, then I have this big squad of the 3-up in bone that's just going to be in the middle of your face the next turn and kill a bunch of stuff. So, always give a 9-man a 3-up in bone. They're always going to be out there. I know I'm going to lose a 9-man turn 1 or turn 2 when I play aggressive like that, but I'm okay with it. And then I'm also okay with 5-mans every single turn, throwing them on the objectives and losing them in the turn 1, turn 2, even turn 3. And typically by turn 3, most of my Harlequins will be dead. And I just know that. So what I do is I go, I'm going to do as much punch as possible. I'm going to spend all my CP in a go, and I'm going to kill as much stuff as I can. And then I'm going to die. But I'm not going to die in one turn, right? You gotta pace it a little bit, because if you go and you die all in one turn, you're going to lose the game. But if I can take this objective from you, take this objective from you, kill a unit, now after 2 turns, 3 turns of doing that, your opponent's going to be in a very bad spot. And that's just like a third of my list, right? How many points is this full Harlequin? The Harlequins are 840 points. So closer to half of my list. But this is what they're meant to do. They're meant to just be in your face, cause havoc, kill a bunch of stuff. Perfectly fine. Got to be okay with losing it. Now, a lot of times I will keep 1 to 2 5-mans, and I'll spread them around the board, right? Like, I'll go around the outside of the board edge. I'll sit behind a piece of cover and wait to jump in the middle of the board, depending where the objectives are. So they're kind of my like hunters, where they'll just kind of sit there and then jump out and do something, and jump out and do something. And then my 9-mans are more, hey, balls of the walls, hold forward, go and kill stuff before you die, and just be a nuisance. It works very well, but there is a lot of mistakes that you can make, and a lot of the mistakes are charging when you shouldn't charge and just take the objective. And it's really just positioning. Like, because I'm taking engage, I can't afford to lose all of them super fast, because then I'll start losing engage points, and it makes engage a little bit harder. But I want to kill stuff at the same time. So we have the mobility, we have the damage output to threaten a lot of stuff in combat. And even with transhuman against like the Ultramarines specifically, it's not that bad. Thomas has like a 10-man intercessor squad. Most of his stuff's gonna have 5-up invuln, which is fine against me. I'm only -2 AP, so with or without his invuln with this, like, he's taking 5-up saves either way in combat. So like, I don't care about the invuln at all. I just want to put as many attacks as possible, and if I make them flat 2 damage, I'm gonna kill a lot of stuff. So the ideal situation, right, is he puts 2 things close to each other. I multi-charge them, but there's a catch. Because he can do Overwatch with a lot of units, and he has a lot of shooting, I have to be able to charge him through a wall. I have no way of denying Overwatch right now. He can spend CP. So like, for me to go into him, I can't just go into him. I have to make sure that the terrain is placed in a way where I am able to charge him through walls, because if I cannot charge him through walls, it's going to be a problem. So that could be detrimental. So I have to make sure that there is a piece of terrain in the middle of the board and on each sides of the board that I can kind of just sit and wait and charge through those without them being a long charge. Because I am not going to take Overwatch from Hellblasters. I'm not going to take Overwatch from Grab Guys. I'm not going to take Overwatch from a 10-man intercessor. You don't think it's that bad until he rerolls everything to hit and to wound, or rerolls wounds of 1, whatever he has on you for rerolling with the closest or +1 to wound, or rerolling everything if that unit's the target. You just don't even want to deal with that. Like, I will lose an entire 9-man squad in Overwatch because of the amount of rerolls he has, and you just can't make that many saves. It's a lot more shooting than you think. So I cannot just charge him straight up. This is an army that is a little bit harder for me because I can't just charge him. A lot of other armies, they're not going to spend to Overwatch a single unit. If they do spend to Overwatch a single unit, maybe I lose one guy, maybe. But with Thomas, I'm going to lose a lot more, and then it automatically makes it not worth it. So got to play a little bit more careful, play around the terrain against an army that can shoot an Overwatch that good. You wouldn't think Ultramarines Overwatch that good, but they definitely do. So that's kind of how the Harlequins are going to play. We're going to be cagey but aggressive. Thomas knows I like to play aggressive, so we have to kind of change it up a little bit. All right, so now we go into the Craftworlds. I love Craftworlds. I have to play them. They are a super big favorite to me. So what they're going to have is they're going to have expert crafters, and they're going to have martial citizenry. So what that is going to do is it's going to allow me to re-roll a single hit and a single wound per unit every time I shoot. So that's going to be very, very good because I have a bunch of support weapons. So every single support weapon out of the 9 that I have are going to be re-rolling a hit and a wound every time. And on top of that, because they are the Guardian, keyword, they will be re-rolling hits of 1 natively. Now what that does is it allows you to just have more accuracy and output. This list, Craftworld wise, really wouldn't benefit from any other trait. So it's better to make my weapons as accurate as possible. So for example, if I get 3 shots on a D cannon and I roll 2 1s and a 2, I'm going to be able to re-roll all 3 of those dice because I'm going to be re-rolling the 1s to hit because of citizenry, and I'm going to be rolling the 2 because of master crafted or expert crafters. So it's really good. It just makes you a little bit more accurate, makes it, if you roll 2 2s, a 2 and a 1, it's not as bad. So the HQ in this is going to be a Farseer. So the Farseer is going to do Doom, which is going to be rerolling all the wounds for the support platforms. That just makes them even more accurate. Most of the time you're wounding on 2s. Sometimes it's 3s. If they transhuman, it's 4s, and that's when it becomes super useful. So against Thomas, Doom is going to be very, very useful. And there's 2 ways to do it. I either bait out, like I Doom a unit, and then I bait out his transhuman on that unit, make him spend the CP, and I shoot like 1 platform at it, and then I shoot all the other platforms at something else that I'll be wounding on 2s. Or I just say, hey, I really need this unit dead. It's going to be doomed. I'm fine with re-rolling everything. So you can go either way, but Doom's going to just allow them to be more accurate. So now it's like I'm going to be almost re-rolling every single hit unless I roll a bunch of 2s. I'm going to be re-rolling all wounds against a unit. So now my D cannons become very, very, very lethal. And then I've got Executioner and Smite. So Executioner doing D3 mortal wounds. If I kill something I knew would do another D3, it's really good. The best way to do this, for anybody that doesn't know, is with the Farseer, if you are going to do the mortal wounds, you do Smite first on multi-wound units. And because most of the time you're only going to do 1 to 3, right? And what you're looking for is you're looking for that 1 or that 3. So against Thomas, he's got 2 wound units. And what I want to do is I want to do 3, or I want to do 1. I don't really care about doing 2 necessarily, because what's going to happen is if I do 1, then I know my Executioner, when it goes off, I'm going to kill a guy and I'm going to do another D3. Now, if I do 3, I'm going to kill a guy. He's going to be on a wound. Then I know Executioner is going to finish that guy, and then I have a potential of killing another one. So obviously you're like, oh, but 2 mortal wounds just kill a guy. Yeah, but then it's just like Executioner might just wound a guy. It might not kill him if you just roll 1 on the damage. So it's a hit or a miss, right? I'm a fan of the 1 or the 3. I don't ever really want a 2 on Smite, or you get a Super Smite and you want that odd number as well. So you want an odd number to go through, so Executioner can pick up a guy and do more mortal wounds. I play the Farseer passive, and then I'll use him to get engage, a little bit late game, I'll use him to maybe just go and do mortal wounds. I don't care if he dies. Most likely you're not picking Assassinate against me. If you do, then I play a little bit more passive with him, but like I don't care if he dies. I'll keep him to do mortal wound output for as long as I can, but the second that I need him to overextend to go and do something, whether it's take an objective, give me engage, go do mortal wounds on a specific unit, he's going to go and do that, and then he's going to die. It's okay. Then the troops, I've got Rangers, so I go back and forth on this as well. I decided to put 2 Rangers squads in here. I took out my Warp Spiders and I changed around a couple other things from what I was playing. And I think the Rangers, what they allow me to do is they allow me to, natively deep strike them. They help with my engage, and they also help with my deploy scramblers. So turn 1, I can do deploy scramblers with any unit in my deployment zone. Turn 2, I can bring a single Ranger squad down either in his deployment or in the middle of the board, and I can do deploy scramblers. And then turn 3, I can do the same thing for whatever one is left. So I don't even have to think about getting deploy as long as they're not trying to block me out of their deployment zone or something. And if they do that, then I have to run across the board with the Harlequins or deep strike in close and get it the next turn. There is some nuances there, and Warp Spiders lend themselves typically to be better because they're typically moving 20 to 24 inches. So they can just get across the board in 2 turns, and they don't have to deep strike. So anything that has anti-deep strike, you don't really have to worry about. But the Rangers, I think, are a little bit better. They're also OBSEC, so I could come in close to an objective. I could then jump on the objective if I have to. They can just sit in a corner behind terrain and give me engage all game, and I don't care. Like, it's perfectly fine if they do that. So they have a lot of use cases and a lot of cool things. Then we've got the support weapons. So these are my while we stand, we fights. And that's super important about this list. It's literally built around this. That is why the Harlequins are 9-mans and not 10-mans, because it puts their point value just under this. So I've got 2 D-cannons and a Shadow Weaver in each one. I'm a really, really big fan, and I've found really great success with this lineup for multiple reasons. So the first reason is it's all out of line of sight shooting, which is amazing, right? You don't care what the terrain is, you just shoot stuff. So let's talk about the Shadow Weavers first. The Shadow Weavers have a couple uses. Typically how I play with them is I play very passive, and I let them be in my deep back line. So they have a 48-inch range, which in this mission specifically, it's going to basically reach everywhere I need it to. Against Marines, they're really not going to do that much work, but against a lot of other units and armies, like let's say Cultists or Poxwalkers or some Guard, these squishier units, because of the number of shots you can put into them, they just kind of eat them up. Marines, I would say out of the 3 of them shooting, maybe I'll kill 1 Marine. Unless I get super lucky, I'll kill 2, maybe. But I'm not going to count on them to kill too much in this matchup. But what they can do is they can sit across my entire back line. I could basically put 1 in each corner of my deployment zone and 1 in the middle. And that prevents all deep strikes and reserves from coming into my deployment zone. And that protects my D-cannons, essentially. Now, against Thomas, he might not put anything in reserve or deep strike depending on what he picks, but against a lot of other units, it's very, very good to use them to block out your board, because you really don't want your Harlequins doing that, you don't want any of your Drukhari doing that, and you certainly aren't going to have your Rangers doing that. They got better things to do. So they are good for doing that, sitting on objectives in your backline and everything. They're out of line of sight shooting, so you can just sit behind a piece of cover and just lob shots all game. Really, really good. The DEET cannons are 24-inch range, so they got to be a little bit more aggressive. So typically what you want is you want a piece of terrain that is on the edge of your deployment or 6 inches in front of your deployment that you can move up against. And now what that does is that's going to give you this entire board threat, right? So against Thomas, I can put a ruin on each side of the board edge, right on my deployment zone, as close to the center as I possibly can. And because it's 24 inches from deployment zone to deployment zone, I can deploy right on the edge. And now the second he comes out of his deployment zone, I'm literally in range of him with all of my D cannons. So now he's going to take 6 D cannons being shot at every single turn whenever he's going for the middle of the board. And against Space Marines, they typically play Oath, so they're going to want to be in the middle of the board. He wants to get to those objectives in the middle to deny, me primary and try to get him more primary. So what that means is it's a huge threat for him. Now, the scary part about them is, if he comes in and he touches them, or if any unit touches them, you're not going to be able to shoot in combat because they're blast. They are very susceptible to dying in combat. They're not going to have invulns. They're T5, 5 wounds. So there is a big threat there that they can get touched and they can die. But there's a lot of counterplay to that we'll talk about at the very end of this. So that's kind of their weaknesses. Their strength is, out of line of sight shooting, their D3 shots. You're re-rolling everything basically. Their strength 12. Like, you're wounding most things on 2s, 3s on some stuff, but like, it's amazing. They're -4 AP. If you don't have an invuln save, you're just dead. And this is very, very good for anti-infantry and anti-vehicle. Because they're D6 damage, like the -1 to damage usually doesn't matter unless you're rolling 2 damage onto your dice, which I do a lot. So then it's like, oh, 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage. But the second that you go like, oh, this D-cannon got 3 shots, this one got 3 shots, oh, 4 damage, 5 damage, 4 damage, 3 damage, like, you're just going to pick stuff up off the table. So they are a little swingy in the sense of you don't know how many shots you're going to get, and you don't know what the damage is. So it's not a guarantee at all, right? But with all the -1 damage, they are very, very good. And because they're out of line of sight shooting, there's not a lot of stuff that threatens them. And if they are getting threatened, your opponent is probably overextending, and because you have all the Harlequins, you're just going to counterpunch them. So it's kind of okay. Yeah, so I just kind of sit there with them. They just castle up and they just shoot all game. And the crazy part is because they become individual units, you get the rerolls on every single one, and while you stand you fight, you got to kill 3 of them to deny me 5 points. So you got to kill a Shadow Weaver and 2 D-cannons from the same squad to deny me those points. So if I wanted to as well, if I don't have to block my back lines, if they don't have deep strike or any of these things, my Shadow Weavers can be aggressive, and I can just run them up the board, and I can just tag stuff with them. And I can be like, oh, tag, you're it. Oh, you can't shoot. Okay, shoot me in combat or fight me, like whatever, cool. So they do have play like that as well. Now they don't have fly or anything. They can't move through walls. They aren't that fast, but you could be aggressive with them. And, they could even be ignored then and help get you engage late game, potentially. The other last cool thing about them is because they're the Guardian, you can give them a 4-up invuln for spending a CP. So you can say, hey, they have the shield, they now have a 4-up invuln. So if one of them is out in the open, and then your opponent goes, oh, I can shoot at them, super juicy, I'm going to kill them. Oh, 4-up invuln. Now you at least have a 50% chance that you're going to live or die. And if you take something in the list that can buff that invuln with a +1 to save, like a Warlock or a Spirit Seer or a Wraith Seer, they could have a 3-up invuln. So T5, 3-up invuln, 5 wounds. Not that bad. It's not that bad. And it's kind of a bait. It's like, oh, there's this thing out there, I need to kill it. Well, it has a 3-up invuln now. It's not that easy to kill. So yes, there is a lot of counterplay with them. I think they're phenomenal. They perform very, very well. Now, what I do to protect them is this. I use my Drukhari. So there's a lot of discussion right now whether racks are going to be units of 10 or units of 20. If they are actually units of 20, this list will change slightly to have 1 unit of 20 probably, and 2 units of 10, or a unit of 10, a unit of 5. But the units of 20 are super useful because of the stratagem to bring them back. I find that I can usually do it with units of 10 as well. So all these is you got your homunculus right here. So he is going to make your racks toughness 5, and all these guys are going to have a 4-up invuln. So this entire army is just 4-up invuln, single wound models. Everything that is not that is either a character or out of line of sight shooting. So you have to chew through 3-up invuln or 4-up invulns in this entire army. And we have how many Harlequins? We've got what, 10, 20, 33 Harlequins. So you've got 33 4-up Invones, followed by another 29 4-up Invones, plus the characters, which are 5, 6 wounds each. It's a lot of 4-up Invones, 3-up Invones on some of the Harlequins. And what these do is these are basically my screen for my my support platforms. So my Harlequins play the super front line. They're going to go in. They're going to be my turns 1, 2, and 3. Then the racks come out for my turns 3, 4, and 5. And basically how that works is they're not going to be able to waste time shooting at my racks because the Harlequins are going to be in their face. So the racks are able to move up the board pretty fast, right? You move 6, you advance them because why not? And 2 of the units have a single weapon in it that is an assault weapon, so I can advance and I can shoot it, and then I would fire and fade with them. So basically, you're going to move 6, you're going to advance, you're going to shoot the gun, you don't care if you hit or miss, and then you're going to move another 6 inches. So like, super strong. You can just move across the board, move from one objective to another, go threaten it, go take it away from them, and now they're like, oh great, now there's 10 racks on this objective that I have to kill. So they move across the board very fast using combos like that, and I've found huge success. And when they're 20 mans, it's even better because you can string them across 2 objectives. You can choose where you want to pull them from, and most of the time they're not going to kill 20 of them. So it's like, oh cool, you killed 12 of them. Well, I can either hide for a turn, or this next turn I'm just going to bring them all back, and I'm going to go put them in a corner over here. Now I'm just going to get engaged the rest of the turn, and I'm going to take your backfield objective. Because by that point, you're going to be re-rolling charges. So it's like, oh, I need a 9-inch charge? Well, I'm re-rolling it. I don't care. Oh, I auto-pass morale? I don't care. I have a 6-up feel no pain? I don't care. You just got to have a lot of I don't cares in there for stuff like this. Like, throw the models out there, let them get shot at. It's whatever. Even at toughness 4, they're still very durable, especially for their point cost. Like 10 of them is 85 points. 80 points if you don't take a gun in them, but I really, really think the gun is super important. And the gun actually is pretty cool because it does mortal wounds. It's like -3 or 4 AP. I'd have to look that up exactly, but like if you kill something, it does mortal wounds. It's like one shot, but if you're shooting at something that doesn't have an invuln and it kills it, then you do mortal wounds. That's pretty sweet. I guess it's a cool added bonus. I don't ever count on that, but it's a cool added bonus. But I have found very, very big success that by the time they chew through the Harlequins, your racks are just getting the primary for you. So Harlequins focus on taking primary away from your opponent. Racks focus on your primary and board control. And then the support platforms focus on denying them board control and holding your backline. It's a 3-tier setup that I've done. I like it a lot. There's a bunch of little tweaks you can make in it. But like I said, really the only tweak I would make is changing up the racks depending on what their points become in the new codex. But I love everything about this list. Let me know what you guys like, what you don't like. If you have any questions about it or additional strategies or anything, definitely let me know. I've been playing a similar list like this for a couple tournaments now, and in the 3 tournaments that I've played, I've gone 2-1 every single time. The games I've lost in the Invitational was by 1 point, and it was silly rules we were playing with, and I made a bunch of just really, really bad mistakes. And then in the other one where I lost a game, I was too aggressive with my racks, and I lost most of my racks in the first turn. So it didn't work out how I needed to. So I've learned kind of how to play the list over, playing it for about 9 games now. And I think that the more you practice with the list, the better you're going to get with it. So I'm a huge proponent of coming up with a list that you like, a list that fits your play style, especially fits you as a player, and then saying, hey, I'm going to figure out how this list works. So that about does it for this list. I'm going to be playing on stream versus Mr. Thomas Bird and his Ultramarines on Wednesday. That is coming up. So make sure you tune in. We will be live at 6 p.m. on our YouTube channel that you're watching this video on. So make sure you hit that reminder, hit the subscribe button, like, do all those things. Let me know if there's any units you want me to, specifically touch on. I am at heart an Eldar player. I do play Tau, but I'm not the expert Tau player by any means, but that's probably my next army I'd fall to if I wasn't playing Eldar, but I'm convinced Eldar can work not as pure Harlequins. And, I'm going 2-1 right now in most of my stuff. It's just a matter of time before I get those 3-0s, 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 3-0s. So yeah, we're working up to that. That's what we're working on. That's what we're practicing towards. Try this list out. Make a couple adjustments. Let me know what you like, but Craftworlds, when they get their codex, it's going to be really good. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Rax. We know that that's coming out this month. If they lose their 4-up invone, if they lose their T5, if they become more points, there's a lot of ifs that could just nuke that part of the list to the ground. But that's okay, because Craftworld does have some troops that can do similar things. Not as good, but similar. Or you could just take a lot of bear Harlequins as well. So there's a lot of options. We'll see how it goes. The last thing I will say about this list when I designed it, which I maybe should have talked about this earlier, but the reason that this list is built like this is there's a lot of multi-damage. This is your takeaway note when you're building a list. There's a lot of multi-damage guns out there right now. Flat 2, flat 3, D6 plus 2, D3, D3 plus 3, D6 plus 2, D6 plus 4. So what happens when you take Harlequin bikes, transports, Drukhari transports, you've got these 3-wound, 5-wound, 6-wound models. Sure, they have a 4-up invone or a 5-up invone. They're -1 to hit. But when you have 4 Melta shots shooting at you, all you have to do is fail one of those and you are dead. It's not good odds. It's just not. It's not good odds at all. I would much rather those 4 Melta shots shoot at my Harlequins with a 3-up invone and lose 1 to 2 guys. That is how I look at it. Points cost, right? Sure, you could lose a transport that's 80 points, 75 points, or you could lose, a guy that's 20, 2 guys that's 40. So it takes 4 guys with the way I have them to equal that, and from the racks, you gotta lose 10 of them to equal a transport. That's insane. You gotta chew through 10 4-up invones. What you do is you're basically denying the multi-damage of being worth anything. So all of these lists that have these super punchy units for shooting that do multi-damage, you're basically saying, hey, I don't care about any of that. I don't care about your AP. So it's an anti-AP and anti-damage army list where it's, it might only be T3. Well, some of my stuff's T5. Cool. But I have a 3-up or a 4-up invone. And I'm a single wound model. I don't care what your damage is. I don't care what your AP is. I'm just going to roll my invones and I'm going to have a 40 to 60% chance that I'm going to make my invone save. It's just all in the odds of the dice. So when you're building lists, if you're taking stuff that is super susceptible to multi-damage, definitely think about that. There's nothing like getting hit with these Meltas or Las Cannons or Hellblasters or Grav guys. There's so much multi-damage out there that will just delete you. There's nothing like missing a 4-up invone save on a bike and that bike being dead because it's flat 3 damage. Oh, there's 4 flat 3 damage shots coming at you. Well, you just lost a whole bike squad, right? You just lost 250 points to 1 shooting because you didn't make 4-up invones. No thanks. I'd rather lose 60 to 80 points of individual troops and not care, have that not care mentality when they die, versus, oh my gosh, I just lost so much, what do I do? So I try to build my lists around that mentality of having throwaway units, mitigating as much of the AP as possible, and mitigating the multi-damage as much as possible. And a lot of lists can't do that. Eldar, fortunately, do it very, very well. They have fast units that have invones. and can be throwaway, which is great. So let me know if you need any help building lists, if you want me to look at your list, if you have any thoughts on this list, always open ears. Help each other grow. We'll see you next time.